Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are here with the second part of my mini series, which is going to be all about tips on panning makeup. So last video I posted was my video focusing on lip products, and today we're going to do the second video again in this installment focusing on specific products, and then the third and final part for this installment is going to be, or for the series, is going to be just everything else, is generalized panning tips. So I'm excited to share with you the tips for today, and as you can see from the title, it is everyone's favorite makeup category. It is eyeshadows. I absolutely love eyeshadows. It is something that I wish I could pan more of. I do take on quite a few eyeshadow projects, and it's just because I love them so much. So I'm going to give you some tips on how I organize myself and how I get progress on like all of them, or well, majority of them, on how I encourage progress. But before I jump into that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. Alright, so I do have 5 tips in this video too, same as in the last one. I think 5 is a good rule, so I'm going to jump into tip number 1. So the first tip that I have, which is quite a big one, is to make sure that you use several eyeshadow in each look that you make. So whenever you do an eyeshadow look, make sure that you incorporate as many eyeshadows as you can, that way you can get progress on more of them at the same time, and you can just kind of touch more things in your collection. So whenever I do like my best panning, when I have my best panning months, I usually reach for like 8 to 9 shadows in each look, and like on average, which is quite a few. You might think that that's a lot, but you know, it's a cream colored shade to like blend out or set your lid. I use a crease shade, sometimes I use like a deepening up shade. I use it in a corner shade. Maybe I will use like 2 different shimmers on the lid. Sometimes I use an eyeshadow in my brows, that's 7. I use like a different one on my lower lash line maybe, and then all of a sudden we're at 8. You know, sometimes I use a second crease shade. Maybe I do like, you know, 1 crease shade on the corner, 1 in my inner corner, things like that. So it does build up, but it's definitely something you have to be cautious for, or you have to be mindful of it when you do your makeup, to reach for more shadows, because of course the more shadows you reach for, the more progress you will get. And yes, I mean, you could also see it if you use 1 shade all over the crease, then that's like more shadow than if you just put it like on half your crease. So it does depend a little bit on what your end goal is, but if you want to hit pan on as many shadows as you can, or have a usage goal on shadows, things like that, incorporating as many eyeshadows as you can is definitely going to be very helpful. Another little small kind of positive side of that as well is that the more shadow you use, and like trying to incorporate more shadows, also boost your creativity. Right now I'm in a little bit of a funk just because my energy levels have been lower towards the end of my pregnancy, so I feel like I'm not as creative and I'm not reaching for as many eyeshadows in my looks as I used to. So it is something that's really fun, that if you try to reach for as many shadows as you can, you might see that you end up being a bit more creative with your looks as well, which I at least think is a bonus. The second tip that I have is to layer shades. So for example, if you're panning like a dull shimmer, try adding it like all over the lid and then putting a topper shade on top of it. That way you can first of all kind of change the tone of the shadow. You can like try it with different toppers, see how you like it, so you still get versatility even though you reach for the same shade every single day. You can also make it a bit more of the type of, I don't know, like finish that you like. Same thing if you're panning like a really sparkly shade and your personally is a bit more you know, you don't want sparkles on the daily. Again, mixing it with more of a satin shade, for example, might tone it down. I haven't actually tried it too much because I am definitely more of a sparkly girl, but putting the sparkly shade on top, the first, and then top it with a satin shade or more of like a typical shimmer might tone it down quite a lot. So trying to play different formulas to find one that you like, and enhance like the type of finish that you like. I think that is something that is definitely really like exciting, and again, it makes you creative and it makes you get more use out of the shadows that you might not like as much from panning, and you can also reach into like your most favorite shades and pair them with the shadow that you're panning. So that I really like that tips. Another kind of side tip of this as well is it does, like I said, mean that you can get different color combinations, and it also works for mattes. So in the past, for example, I've had like hot pink shadows, and I haven't always been feeling like a hot pink crease, for example, if it was a crease shade. So what I've done is like I mix it with a blue, and then it creates more of a purple, which for me like is a bit more wearable. You can tone it down quite a lot with other shades. If you're panning a really bright, vibrant yellow shade, I have found that pairing it with a brown again tones it down and makes more of a murky type of brown, which again is a bit more wearable than a bright neon yellow. So try mixing shades and see how you like it. And again, first of all, you can get more versatility with the shadows that you're panning, and you don't have to do the same look every single day if that's what you're into. And also you might be able to use either a formula or a shadow shade that you don't like for every day, more on an everyday basis if you pair it with more everyday shades. So that is tip number 2. Tip number 3 is to make sure that you use your eyeshadows every single day. Make sure that you do your makeup every day, and make sure that you do eyeshadow specifically every single day. Similarly to what I mentioned in my lip product pan, you need to use your products in order to get progress on them. If you don't do eyeshadow every single day, let's say you don't do eyeshadow throughout the week, you will only have like 2 days out of the week, which is the weekends, to actually get progress on your eyeshadows. So, you know, having 2 days instead of 7, that drastically lowers the amount of days. That will take a whole, 4 weeks, month, from 28 uses down to 8, which is quite significantly lower. So it is something to keep in mind, and it's definitely something that I would recommend doing. Just get into the habit. Yes, of course, like I said before, it is good to reach for as many eyeshadows as you can, but if you have a really busy schedule, you don't have time to do really intricate looks, like creative looks every single day, I would recommend just doing a couple shades, just easy throw-on shades for the everyday, because even if you just do a simple look, it is better than doing no look at all. So yeah, definitely recommend that one. It's something that I do. I have had more like no makeup days recently again, but sometimes I do my makeup twice in a day, because I'm filming and then I'm going out, or I've been out and then I come home and then I film in the evening, stuff like that. So I try to even it out so that I have at least, one use per day on average. And I think that's something that definitely helps me get good progress on my eyeshadows. So for tip number 4, this is more focused on trying to finish shadows. So if you're trying to finish shadows, I would say try frankening them. So don't necessarily franken the whole shadow, but if you have a shadow that you're trying to finish and you're a bit tired of it, you feel like you're using it in every single look, it looks the same every single day, try frankening it, because that way you can end up having, 2 shades instead of 1, so you can have some more versatility again. Of course, be cautious about how much shadow you add in. If you add in too much shadow, then you're gonna have more shadow to finish, which is gonna be a bit counterproductive. But for example, you can franken 2 shadows that you're trying to finish. So 2 different shadows that you're trying to finish, if you franken them into 1, it's still the same amount of shadow, but it's more of a problem when you take in shadows that you necessarily aren't trying to finish at the moment. Then you just add into the amount that you're trying to finish, if that makes sense. But either way, I feel like frankening is really useful. For example, my Panda palette this year, you've seen that I have frankened the absolute crap out of, and that is because a lot of the shades that I had left at the end of the year last year were really dark shades, and I'm just not into dark shades at the moment. I'm going for much more lighter looks than I ever used to, which means that I would have very limited use on those shadows. So even though it means adding more shadow in, I have frankened like those shadows with like whites and creams to tone them down and make them lighter and more like transition shade, crease shades. And doing that means that I can get way more progress on them, because I can reach for them every single day rather than just like when I want a smokier look, if that makes sense. So definitely recommend frankening. If you haven't tried it before, definitely try. I love it. I think it's a great tip. And if you are intimidated by frankening, what I recommend doing is mixing the shadows on your hand before, or like I said before, try to mix them on your eyes. So, dip your brush back and forth, just to see what kind of color you would get. But I recommend playing around with it and like swatching it on your hands, because then you can kind of get a better idea of what end goal you will get when you franken it. It won't be exact, but at least then you can get an idea of what kind of colors work together. Alright, so we've come to the very final goal, and that is to try to pan a look. So I think finding a look that you really like using basically majority shadows that you're panning, or all shadows that you're panning, and kind of repeating that look for a couple of days until you hit like one of your goals, and then you can switch up the look, has really helped me. So yes, I do like being creative whenever I film. That is my time to be creative. For you, it might be like evening makeup or weekend makeup. That can be when you like creative, but having a staple everyday look for the weeks is a game changer, especially if you figure out one that incorporates only shadows that you're panning, because that means that you're going to ensure having progress on those shadows. And it also helps in the mornings if you're getting ready for work. Again, like I said, do makeup every single day, and if you have a no-brainer look, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to like open up loads of palettes and be like, okay, what am I going to put in my crease today? You have a look that you know you're going to do, and it speeds up your makeup application in the morning so much. So yeah, for me, that is something that I do a lot for everyday makeup. Whenever I go to the office, things like that, I do try to have those kind of looks ready on the go. And I also do switch it up like every week or bi-weekly, so yeah, once to twice a week, just so that I still don't get bored. But I do try to have, you know, one or two of those looks on rotation at any point in time, so that I can easily get progress on some of my shadows while, you know, still kind of having a simple look to go to. So those are all of the tips that I have for panning shadows. Again, make sure to check out the lip product kind of category or video that I posted a couple of days ago. I have some more tips in there, and yes, some of those can be applied to these, you know, to eyeshadows too, or to any product, but these are more kind of specific for the category. But again, I will have another video up in a couple of days that is my kind of everything else category, so that will be more generalized panning goals, which I think will be able to be applied onto both eyeshadows and lip products too. So that is going to be the kind of banger of a video to wrap everything up. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this little tip video. I hope you get some more insight into my panning and how I get progress on my things. I know a lot of people have requested it in different videos over the years. I think I did one of these years and years ago, like back in 2020 maybe, like a long time ago, 2021 maybe. But I wanted to make an updated one. I can't remember what tips I gave in that one, but I have had the question over the years a couple times, so I wanted to make some videos like this. But I hope you guys are having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!